Good morning, my dear ones.
Morning.
Good morning. Well, this morning we are continuing on this wonderful exploration of this book called The Book of Joy. The Book of Joy. This Book of Joy is a series of conversations between His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, and the Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and they spent a week together celebrating one of their birthdays and being together in such joy for their love of one another and their mutual respect for one another is so very evident. If you're able to pick up a copy of this book, I think that Mary Ellen has some in the bookstore, but even if you just go online and Google this, you will find these amazing photos that were taken throughout the week of the two of them dancing together, laughing together, hugging one another. Their joy is just palpable. You can see how much they love and respect each other. And these are two great masters, spiritual masters of our time. We get to enjoy them during our lifetime. Not only are they spiritual masters, but they are moral leaders. And their friendship, their joy and love of one another transcends these faith traditions that we have that tend to separate us. Their friendship shows us that we are not defined by these lines or these categories that we call ourselves Buddhist or Episcopalian or Methodist or Unity or any number of other faith traditions, that they are not who we are. It's how we choose to follow our spiritual path. Both the Dalai Lama and the Archbishop Tutu were recipients of the Nobel Peace Prize. Desmond Tutu received his in 1984 and the Dalai Lama in 1989. So they have been greatly respected in their teachings of peace for a very long time, universally recognized for their work. We know that the Dalai Lama considers himself a simple monk, and that the Archbishop Desmond Tutu has never claimed a sainthood and has attempted to decline or to refuse several promotions that have been bestowed upon him, for his leadership was recognized very early on in his days of priesthood. We know also that the Dalai Lama lives in exile, that he was forced to escape Tibet. He actually literally escaped in the night, afraid that he would be recognized because of the glasses that he wore. His very life was in danger, and he recognizes that he will probably never go back home again. And the Archbishop, who is an amazing pioneer and and truly a crusader for justice, for all, and especially in the racial reconciliation in South Africa. He faced death threats almost daily, and not just towards himself, but towards his family, death threats on a regular basis. And yet, through all of these experiences, neither one of these amazing individuals lives in cynicism. Instead, they live in a joy that is tremendously authentic, and they authentically desire to share their understanding of joy, their understanding on living lives out loud, of loving one another. They want to share this with the world, with the whole world. And in our first week of exploration of this book, we looked at the concept, the question, what's your angle? Where are we looking from? What is our viewpoint? Where is our perspective? Where is our perception coming from? Are we stuck in the muck of what may be going on in our lives, or are we able to broaden our view, to raise our perspective from a higher point of view? And when we do that, when we're able to rise above, what is happening in our lives, we also recognize that we are not alone, that we have never been and can never be alone. But when we come at life from the perception or the viewpoint of a victim, we feel very much alone. And we can remedy that simply by lifting our eyes, raising our view. Well, today we're looking at the concept of humility, modesty, laughter, and joy. You may ask, or you may have the question of how is humility related to joy? Well, they have the very same root word. The very same root word for humility or being humble, or humor, being in joy, is a Latin word, and it's humus. And it means earth, means groundedness. In some sense, you could say it means being pulled down to earth, having your feet on the ground. And it's not to be confused with hummus, which is a Middle Eastern food, which is delicious, but it's humus. And so humility is a state of being. It's a state of being unpretentious. It's a state of being open to others. It is a state of being in awe. And I will often say, allow yourself to be wowed, allow to wow, allow your heart to be wowed, allow your mind to be wowed, allow your very being to be wowed. Allow life to wow you. People, nature, miracles, mystery. Allow yourself to be in awe. For in that state, it is not one of being confused or uncertainty. It's a glorious state of recognizing the true delight of being alive. So humility is a way of being humble. It is not being timid. It's not having a low view of yourself. It's seeing yourself, especially yourself with a large S, in relationship to all others, in relationship to the entire world. It does not demean you, for you recognize that we are all the same. And that's one of the things that helps the Dalai Lama so much when he found himself outside of Tibet and in exile, where the world was available to him and he was available to the world, and he would be very frightened to speak in front of such large groups of people, and he would just remember, we are all the same. For humility is essential to joy. It's essential to a life of joy. It's laying down our titles, laying down our medals, all the initials at the end of our name, all of our accomplishments. It's setting all that aside so that we can, each one of us, unabashedly and authentically be joy-filled. And in that, we're approachable. We're approachable and we can connect with others in truly meaningful ways, ways that are not possible when we are guarded by our titles or our initials. We are each normal human beings. Okay, some of us may be less normal than others, but we are all normal human beings, and we are all born and we will all die in the same way. We are all equal. Humility removes barriers and holds that kind of that equal sign for us. No one above, no one below. We are all the same. The Archbishop Desmond Tutu loves to tell this joke about three bishops that go before the altar, and they are beating their chests and they are proclaiming before God that they are nothing. They are beating their chest and they are saying, I am nothing, I am nothing. They are professing their nothingness. And a young acolyte comes and joins them. A lowly acolyte comes and joins them and stands before the altar and also beats his chest and proclaims is nothingness. And one bishop elbows the other and says, look who thinks he's nothing. It is so evident that laughter lifts us. Laughter unites us. And I can only imagine if there'd been a counter that could count the many of times that throughout that 1 week, the Dalai Lama and the Archbishop found themselves just laughing, just belly laughing at their jokes, laughing at one another, laughing at themselves. Laughter truly is good medicine. And they refer to themselves, I believe I shared with you, they're mischievous spiritual brothers. That's who they are. And they are both so mischievous. The Dalai Lama told the story, and I can just imagine him giggling the whole time he was telling the story about being at an interfaith gathering in New Delhi. And there are all these religious leaders who've gathered together. And one of them, when they came to find their space, argued that their chair was not tall enough. And the people who were putting together the event actually went and got some bricks and put under the legs of the chair to raise his chair up so that he would be higher than everyone else. And the Dalai Lama is watching this happen. And he says that he was sitting there immobile, the religious leader on this tall chair. He was just like a statue. And the Dalai Lama is thinking, something should happen. Those bricks, one of them might topple, or one of the legs might break, because this man needs to recognize that he's the same as everyone else, not to humiliate the religious leader, but to give him the vital teaching that he's missing. And so he was giggling and saying, he was actually kind of saying, oh, God, maybe you should break the legs of that chair. And the Archbishop is saying, no, you were not. And he's going, oh, yes, I was saying this. For sameness is so important to our involvement in our world. And we reviewed that a little bit the first week when I shared Samantha's story about having met Desmond, or the Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and asking him where the bathroom was. She called me actually last week and said, you've been on my mind a lot, and I'm not sure why. And I said, well, it's because I shared your story about when you were a teenager. So we had to laugh about that as well. So what actually prevents us from living in this state of joy and laughter and modesty? It's the fears that we have as human beings living in the human condition. And we all have these fears to different degrees in our lives and different times in our lives. And it's the fear of not being enough, or the fear of not measuring up, the fear perhaps of being abandoned or forgotten or not noticed or not being loved. It's competitiveness of our human nature. We all have a little bit, at least, of a competitiveness in our human nature. I've been seeing that this week with my grandson, who just turned 5, and our granddaughter, who's not quite 3. Yes, there's competitiveness at a very early age. And one of the ways that we combat all of those fears is that we wear these shields and masks. Not like the mask we wear to the grocery store, but a full mask, a mask that has our titles and our medals and our initials after our name and all of our accomplishments. And all that does is keep us separated from one another, and keeps us in a state of being suspicious of one another when we can't see behind the mask, when we don't feel the authenticity of the person before us, but only their title, which we sometimes wear as crowns on our heads. When we turn to scripture this morning, we're looking at the Christian scriptures at the Gospel of Matthew, and we're looking at the 6th chapter. And here in the Gospel, Jesus is warning his followers about having this false pride. And he says, beware of practicing your piety before men in order to be seen by them. It's as if you're the three bishops in front of the altar beating your chest. Be careful of practicing this before others. When you give alms, do not sound the trumpet. Look at what I've done. Look at what I've given. Look at how generous I am. And when you pray, you need not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand on the corner to be noticed. He's warning us. He's teaching us the value of humility, the value of being humble and honoring who we are and honoring all others. For we are all the same. We are all God's children. This morning, when Aaron was leading the Silent Unity prayer service, one of the lines that he was sharing with us was, every man is my brother. Every woman is my sister. We are all equal. And living with humility allows us to embrace life and to embrace one another so that we can join in laughter, so that our joy can be unlimited. For it's not only the delightful things that happen in our own life, but we can revel in the joy, in the glorious outcropping of blessings in the lives of all those that we know and even those we don't know. Our joy is not limited to just what happens in our own life. Joy cannot be contained in our hearts. It's that big. Well, this past week, I have also come to a very clear realization that joy is not something that can be laid on top of other feelings. It truly must be something that authentically erupts from within us. It was during this past week that I was preparing for this talk. And so I was allowing things to bubble up within me about the subject of joy. And I am an optimist, eternally so, and I'm sure at times probably irritatingly so. And I recognize that. I get that. But I could speak on joy for weeks and months. I call it the book of joy, sometimes because of the title, but I also think of this as a season of joy and really a lifetime of joy. And this past week, as I've been considering stories and I've been considering the approaches and the ideas and allowing themselves to be revealed this morning, to be revealed through my talk, I was contacted by a dear friend of Unity of the Keys, Jack Moyer. And we spoke on the phone. And Allie has made the decision to discontinue her chemotherapy and is at home now with Jack under hospice care. And Jack asked that I come and pray with them the following day. I immediately suspended all of the place that I was at working on my talk for this morning, because I realized that I was not in that space of joy. I cannot prepare a talk or a lesson on joy if it's not coming from within me. And I realized that I had work to do. I knew that I had work to do on my own stuff before I met with Jack and Allie. I recognized that I had grief and sadness and loss, and that was my stuff. Jack had asked me to come and be present with them, and I needed to be fully present with them, to be fully there for them. And so I had a very sleepless night, a very restless night, very unsettling. And that was my process. I was working through my process. And the next day when I woke, I was grounded. I felt present. I really felt centered. My daughter Kate came and picked me up, and we're driving to Tampa, and she asked how I was doing because I was crying on the phone when I talked to her the day before. I told her I felt incredibly humbled and honored to be asked to have this request, to face this life decision with them. And that's truly what it is. It's a life decision. And then being with Allie and Jack and being with their family and getting to hold Allie's hand and praying with them and hugging Jack and seeing Allie smile, her sweet smile, and seeing Jack's dedication to her. How could I not be filled with joy? Tremendous joy. And recognizing we must work through our stuff first. We can't just layer joy on top and say, oh, well, that's done. I'm happy. No, we do our work and we keep doing our work and we keep expressing joy to the fullest as we are able in any situation in our lives. I leave you this morning with a Tibetan practice. It's called Lojong, and it's a practice of humility. And actually, Lori kind of helped you along with that during the meditation by having you visualize people that you love and care about. And there's two parts to this practice. The first is that you reflect, just think about all the people who are responsible for your life. And so you start with your parents who brought you into this world. And then perhaps teachers who guided you along the way, maybe coaches, maybe Sunday school teachers, maybe ministers or neighbors, godparents, aunts and uncles, people who were there to guide you along your way. And then the farmers who grew your food and those who made your clothing for you or made the cloth so that your parents could make your clothing, and things that we don't think of often that we take for granted, the furnishings around us, all the people that were involved in making this table and this chair, who created the housing, the houses, the furnishings, the kitchen, everything that we have, the computers, all the crops that continue to be grown, all the medicines that we take, all the people that are responsible for creating these products and transporting them and storing them and checking us out or mailing our things to us, all these people. And then there's our ancestors who lived through difficult times so that we can be here today. And all of our family and our friends who so enrich our lives. And so we think about these people. We reflect on this huge group of people that we have now mentioned. And then we simply allow our hearts to open, to allow our heart to open to each of these individuals and simply rest in that space of loving respect, honoring each person in your life, each person who helped you become who you are today. Even those people who challenge us, our teachers, those people that we don't get along with necessarily, sometimes those are our greatest teachers. They show us where our edges are and where we need to work. So open your heart, love, and then rest in that love and rest in that awareness. May your week be filled with humility, modesty, laughter, and great, great joy. God bless you, my friend.